exactly 7 words that will make a narcissist recoil from you like you just held up a crucifix to a vampire. And the reason these words are so powerful isn't because they're cruel or cutting. It's because they're true. And narcissists, more than anything else, are terrified of the truth. Let's be brutally honest about something. Most people fail, and fail catastrophically, when they try to confront a narcissist. Why? Because they walk onto a battlefield of the narcissist's choosing, armed with weapons that are not only useless, but actually give the enemy strength. You bring your emotion, you bring your sense of fairness, you bring your desire for resolution and mutual understanding. And to the narcissist, these things are not tools for connection, they are vulnerabilities to be exploited. You are essentially trying to have a rational argument with a hurricane. It's a fool's errand. The fundamental error is this: you believe you are in a negotiation when in fact you are in a war. It's a war of psychological reality. The narcissist constructs a distorted world, a warped map of reality where they are the heroic, aggrieved center of the universe, and you are the flawed, irrational, and endlessly indebted supporting character. Every emotional reaction you have, your anger, your tears, your desperate explanations, is you agreeing to use their map. You are validating their twisted reality by operating within its borders. And on that terrain, they will always win. The shift in power, and believe me, it is a tectonic shift, occurs the very moment you stop reacting and start responding. An emotional reaction is a chaotic, gut-level burst of energy. It's the flinch, the cry, the outburst. A strategic response, on the other hand, is a calm, deliberate act of will. It is the conscious decision to throw their map in the fire and to stand firmly on the ground of what you know to be true. This is where language becomes your greatest weapon, not as a club to beat them with, but as a hammer and nails to build a structure of reality so solid that their illusion simply cannot penetrate it. To understand why this works, you have to look underneath the hood. You have to understand what truly drives the machine of narcissism. What does a narcissist actually fear beneath the grandiose posturing and the self-aggrandizing monologues? It isn't your anger. It isn't your logic. It is, quite simply, exposure. Their entire personality is a fortress built brick by painful brick around a core of profound inadequacy and shame. It's a grand, glittering castle constructed to hide a terrified, wounded child within. This isn't an excuse for their behavior, not in the least. It is a strategic observation. Their greatest fear is that someone will see the cracks in the fortress wall, that someone will catch a glimpse of the pathetic reality they are so desperately trying to conceal. They live in mortal terror of being truly seen. This is why certain words, spoken with clarity and without malice, act as psychological triggers. These words don't attack the fortress, they simply illuminate it. They hold up a mirror. And in that mirror, the narcissist is forced to see not the reflection of the God they imagine themselves to be, but the faint outline of the fraud they fear they are. It is the psychology of shame in its purest form. They are not afraid you will hurt them. They are afraid you will see them for what they are, and that the seeing itself will annihilate the illusion they depend on for their very existence. I want you to think about this for a moment, and I'm serious about this. Pause and reflect. Have you ever said something to a difficult person that made them immediately back down, and you weren't even sure why it worked? Maybe you were just tired, maybe you ran out of energy to fight, and you said something simple and direct, and suddenly the storm stopped. There's a science to this, a deep psychology, and I want you to consider your own experiences as we unpack it. What was it you said? What was the tone? And what was the result? Because you may have stumbled upon this principle without even realizing it. This brings us to the framework of verbal boundaries. Let's be deadly clear about this. Setting a boundary with language is not an act of aggression. Aggression is an attempt to control or harm another person. Assertive truth-telling, which is what we are discussing, is an act of self-control. It is the refusal to have your reality dictated to you. Think of it like a property line. Aggression is invading your neighbor's yard. Setting a boundary is simply standing on your own property and stating, calmly and firmly, you may not cross this line. The words themselves, which we will get to, are only half the equation. Your tone and delivery are what give them their power. A boundary screamed in anger is not a boundary, it is an invitation to a fight. It signals that you are still operating on the battlefield of emotion, and the narcissist will gladly meet you there. But a boundary stated with the calm, unwavering finality of a mathematical truth, that is something their mind cannot process. It's like dividing by zero. It breaks the game. Your calm authority becomes a mirror reflecting their chaos, and it is a sight they cannot stand. So what happens when you learn to do this? What is the transformation that awaits you on the other side of this fear? It's not just about managing a difficult relationship. It's about a fundamental change in your own being. The respect that you will begin to feel from others, and most importantly from the narcissist, is not something they choose to give you. It is something that emerges as a natural consequence of your own self-respect. You cease to be a pawn in their game because you have chosen to stop playing. You begin the journey from being a character in their story to being the author of your own. And that truly is where power lies. Here's something that's going to make you uncomfortable. Narcissists don't disrespect you because you're weak. They disrespect you because they sense you have something they desperately want, but can never truly possess. Authentic self-worth. And that terrifies them. The selection of a target by a narcissist is not a random act of malice. It's a predatory calculation, an instinct honed over a lifetime of seeking what they lack. Think of a wolf pack. They don't just attack any animal in the herd. They watch. They test. They look for a specific set of characteristics. And contrary to what you might think, they are not drawn to the weakest members. They are often drawn to the strongest, to the ones with the most vitality, because that is where the greatest prize lies. So, what qualities make you so damn attractive to a manipulator? First and foremost, your empathy. Your capacity to feel, to understand, to give the benefit of the doubt. This is a foreign language to the narcissist, but one they know how to exploit. They see your empathy not as a strength, but as an unlocked door. Your competence is another beacon. You are good at what you do. You have skills. You have discipline. You produce results. This competence is a resource they wish to co-opt, to claim as their own. It feeds their delusion of grandeur. And finally, your integrity, your fundamental decency, your commitment to the truth, your desire to do the right thing. This is perhaps the most potent lure of all. Because you are honest, you assume others are as well. Because you are conscientious, you cannot easily conceive of someone who operates without a conscience. Your strength, paradoxically, becomes your vulnerability. It is the terrible irony of the predator-prey dynamic. The very light you possess is what draws the darkness to you. The narcissist sees your integrated self, your genuine capacity for warmth and achievement, and it is both a source of deep envy and a target for demolition. They want to consume it, and failing that, to destroy it, so that its existence no longer reminds them of their own hollow core. Once a target is identified, the testing begins. And you have to understand, these are not overt assaults, not at first. They are subtle probes, psychological experiments designed to measure your defenses. It might be a small, backhanded compliment. It might be a promise that is forgotten. It might be a joke made at your expense that is just sharp enough to sting, but presented lightly enough that if you object, you become the one with no sense of humor. Each of these is a little experiment. The narcissist is asking a question. Will you tolerate this? Can I get away with this? Your reaction, or lack thereof, is the data they collect. If you laugh it off, if you make excuses for them, if you let it slide in the name of keeping the peace, you have just told them everything they need to know. You have shown them the blueprint to your boundaries. And based on that data, they escalate. The forgotten promise becomes a broken commitment. The sarcastic joke becomes a humiliating insult in front of others. It is a systematic, incremental violation of your sovereignty. This is the crucial difference between normal human conflict and the calculated disrespect of a narcissist. In a healthy relationship, conflict arises and is resolved. It's a dance of negotiation. With a narcissist, it isn't conflict, it's a campaign. It is a methodical erosion of your standards, one small disrespect at a time, until you find yourself standing on ground you swore you would never concede. This escalation is what I call the disrespect cycle, and it is a form of psychological conditioning as insidious as any ever devised. It starts with a minor transgression. You feel a prick of annoyance, a sense of injustice, but you override it. Why? Because you're a decent person. You don't want to make a scene over something so small. But that small violation, once accepted, becomes the new baseline for the relationship. The next violation will be slightly larger, and the one after that larger still. The narcissist needs you to accept this escalating pattern of poor treatment because it serves a vital purpose. It continuously reinforces their distorted reality. In their world, they are entitled to special treatment, and your acceptance of their disrespect is your silent agreement. You are being conditioned step by step to accept the unacceptable. Each time you fail to hold the line moves. And what's truly terrifying is how quickly a person can adapt. The human psyche is built for adaptation, but that feature can be turned against us. Disrespect, when it is constant and incremental, can start to feel normal. The state of being on edge, of walking on eggshells, of constantly managing their moods, this becomes your new reality. You forget what it was like to be treated with simple, baseline decency. The abnormal has been normalized. So why do good people, empathetic, conscientious, well-meaning people, so often struggle to even recognize this process as it's happening? The primary reason is that your internal response patterns are working against you. Your natural desire for harmony, for smoothing things over, for seeing the best in people, is a liability in this context. You project your own decency onto them. You think they can't possibly be it that way. Or they're just having a bad day. You engage in a form of self-deception because the alternative, that this person is deliberately and systematically disrespecting you, is too monstrous a thought to entertain. This leads to a profound and debilitating self-doubt. You begin to question your own perceptions. Am I being too sensitive? Am I overreacting? This is the narcissist's greatest trick, to convince you that the problem isn't their behavior, but your reaction to it. You become an unreliable narrator in your own life story. But there comes a moment, a breaking point. It might be a disrespect so blatant, so undeniable, that it shatters the fog of self-doubt. It is the moment when the accumulated weight of all the small violations becomes too heavy to bear. It is a moment of terrible clarity when you look at the dynamic for what it is and you realize with a certainty that chills you to the bone that something fundamental must change. And that change begins not with them, but with you. What I'm about to share with you are not insults or attacks. These are surgical instruments of truth. When you use these phrases, you're not trying to hurt them, you're establishing reality. And for a narcissist, reality is the most dangerous weapon of all. Weapon 1T. I see what you're doing. There is perhaps no phrase more terrifying to a manipulator than this one. What? Because their entire mode of operation depends on the plausible deniability of their motives. They thrive in the fog of ambiguity. The passive-aggressive comment, the subtle put down, the innocent question designed to sow insecurity. These are their stock in trade precisely because they can retreat from them. They can claim you misunderstood, that you're too sensitive. But the statement, I see what you're doing, cuts through that fog like a laser. It is a declaration that you are not fooled. You are not a pawn in their game. You are a conscious observer of it. You are pulling back the curtain and exposing the pathetic little man operating the levers. This phrase doesn't require a follow-up. You don't need to explain what you see. The power is in the ambiguity of your awareness. It communicates, the game is up. I am onto you. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifts irrevocably. You're taking away their primary weapon, the camouflage of pretended innocence. They are exposed, and exposure is a narcissist's deepest fear. Weapon 2D? That's not my responsibility. The narcissist is a master of outsourcing responsibility. Their failures, their bad moods, their chaotic lives, these are never their own fault. They are a consequence of your inadequacy, your lack of support, your failure to anticipate their needs. They hand you the heavy burden of their own emotional and practical dysfunction and expect you to carry it. The phrase, that's not my responsibility, is you handing that burden right back. It is a radical act of boundary setting. It draws a clear, bright line around your own sovereignty. It states that you will be responsible for your own actions and emotions, and they must be responsible for theirs. This will feel unnatural at first, especially if you are an empathetic and conscientious person. You are wired to help. But you must learn the crucial difference between helping someone and enabling them. Carrying their emotional water for them is not helping. It is enabling their pathology. When you refuse to take responsibility for their problems, you are not being cruel. You are forcing them, perhaps for the first time, to confront the consequences of their own choices. It is a liberation, both for you and, in a strange and painful way, for them. Weapon 30, I won't be spoken to that way. This is not a request. It is a decree. It is the establishment of a non-negotiable standard for civil discourse. Narcissists systematically erode your standards of treatment through escalating disrespect. They test you with small slights, and when you tolerate them, they escalate. This phrase halts that process dead in its tracks. It is crucial that this is delivered with calm finality, not with anger. Anger says, you've hurt me. Calm finality says, that is a line you will not cross. There is a world of difference. One invites a fight, the other ends a violation. This is not a threat. A threat is if you speak to me that way, I will. A boundary is simply a statement of what you will and will not accept. I won't be spoken to that way requires no further justification. It is a fundamental declaration of self-worth. It says, I am a person who deserves basic respect, and that is the price of admission for interacting with me. Weapon 40, your feelings about this are not my problem. Narcissists weaponize their emotions. Their rage, their tears, their pouting, their dramatic sighs of victimhood. These are not genuine expressions of feeling. They are manipulative tactics designed to control your behavior. They want you to scurry around trying to manage their emotional state, to placate their anger, to soothe their manufactured hurt. They make you believe that their emotional stability is your responsibility. This phrase severs that manipulative cord. It is a profound declaration of emotional independence. It says, you are a grown adult, and you are solely responsible for your own emotional reactions. This will feel incredibly harsh because decent people feel a responsibility to the emotions of others. But you must understand, you are not responsible for regulating the feelings of another adult. By refusing to engage in their emotional drama, you are returning autonomy to them. You are forcing them to sit with their own feelings instead of using them as a club to beat you with. It is a powerful, paradigm-shifting statement that dismantles one of their most effective tools of control. Weapon 50, I don't need to justify myself to you. Have you ever found yourself in a circular argument with a narcissist endlessly explaining and defending your decisions, your feelings, your very existence? This is a deliberate trap. They act as a prosecutor, and you are put on the stand. They demand that you justify yourself, and the more you explain, the more ammunition you give them to twist your words and find new avenues of attack. It's a game you can never win. Over-explaining is a position of weakness. It signals that you believe their approval is required for your decisions to be valid. The phrase, I don't need to justify myself to you, is your refusal to take the stand. It communicates that you are the ultimate authority in your own life. Your decisions are yours. Your reasons are yours. You do not require their validation or their permission. Standing in the quiet confidence of your own choices without the desperate need for their endorsement is a profoundly powerful position. Weapon 60, this conversation is over. This is the eject button. It is the tool you use when a discussion has devolved into a word salad. A nonsensical, circular, and exhausting monologue designed to confuse and dominate you, not to communicate. You are not required to participate in a conversation that is going nowhere. You are not obligated to be an audience for their circular logic and gaslighting. Stating, this conversation is over, and then physically removing yourself by walking out of the room or hanging up the phone is the ultimate reinforcement of a verbal boundary. It demonstrates that your time and mental energy are valuable resources that you will not squander on fruitless, toxic interactions. It shows through action that you mean what you say. Weapon 70, I'm not interested in your opinion of me. This is it. This is the kill shot to the heart of narcissistic dynamic. The entire relationship from their perspective is predicated on their role as the judge and you as the one being judged. They need you to need their approval. They need you to fear their disapproval. Their opinion is the currency of their power. When you state calmly and as a matter of fact that their opinion of you is irrelevant, you have just bankrupted their entire system. You have declared your independence from their judgment. This is not something you say in a fit of pique. It is a statement of achieved self-validation. It says, I know who I am, I have my own moral compass, I have my own sense of worth, and your assessment is quite simply no longer required. This is the ultimate freedom. It is the moment you stop looking to them for a reflection of yourself and find it within. The reason these phrases are so devastating to narcissists isn't because they're mean. It's because they destroy the fundamental lie that their entire personality is built upon. And when you understand this lie, you'll understand why your words have the power to completely disarm them. To understand the power of these phrases, you must first grasp the monumental and precarious architecture of the narcissistic psyche. The narcissist has constructed what is best described as a false self, a grandiose and inflated persona designed for one purpose, and one purpose only, to solicit a continuous stream of external validation, which they call narcissistic supply. This false self is a fictional character, heroic, brilliant, uniquely victimized, and supremely important. But here's the crucial point: it is an edifice with no foundation. It is a hollow god. And like any false idol, it requires constant worship from the outside world to maintain the illusion of its divinity. This endless need for validation is not mere arrogance. It is a desperate existential necessity. Without the reflection of admiration in the eyes of others, the false self begins to crumble, threatening to expose the void it was built to conceal. This is why a simple challenge, a boundary, or a refusal to play along is not perceived as a minor disagreement. To the narcissist, it is a seismic threat to their entire psychological structure. It is a crack in the idol. When you say, I see what you're doing, or that's not my responsibility, you are refusing to provide the worship the false self requires. You are, in that moment, an apostate, a non-believer, and your dissent threatens to reveal to the narcissist, and worse, to the world, that their God is a fraud. This is the critical distinction between healthy self-confidence and pathological grandiosity. The confident person has an internal locus of control. Their self-worth is generated from within based on competence and experience. The grandiose person has an external locus of control. Their sense of self is a fragile reflection, entirely dependent on the opinions and reactions of others. Your words of truth don't challenge their strength. They expose their absolute and terrifying weakness. So what lies beneath this glittering, grandiose mask? What is the terrible secret that the fortress of narcissism is built to protect? It is a core of profound, unmitigated shame. At the center of the narcissist is a deeply held belief in their own worthlessness and inadequacy. This is the wound that never healed, the primary terror from which their entire personality is a flight. They have spent their lives running from this shame, constructing an elaborate alternate reality where they are the opposite of everything they fear themselves to be. And the verbal weapons we discussed, they are so effective because they bypass the grandiose fortress walls and speak directly to this hidden core of shame. When you refuse to accept blame, you are holding up a mirror to their own culpability. When you refuse to manage their emotions, you force them to confront their own internal chaos. When you refuse to seek their approval, you tacitly reveal that their judgment is worthless. Each of these acts is a form of exposure. And exposure to the narcissist triggers an immediate and overwhelming activation of this core shame. It is the feeling of being seen, not as the glorious idol they pretend to be, but as the flawed, contemptible being they secretly believe they are. This is a psychological state they cannot tolerate. Their defenses are designed precisely to avoid this feeling at all costs. To be truly seen is to be annihilated. Your simple, declarative statements of reality pierce the veil and force a confrontation with the very thing they have spent a lifetime trying to outrun. How does a narcissist maintain dominance in a relationship? Primarily through the strategic deployment of confusion and doubt. They are masters of the word salad, the circular argument, the gaslighting comment that makes you question your own sanity. They create a fog of emotional and intellectual chaos in which you lose your bearings. In that disoriented state, they are in control. They define reality because you have become untethered from it. Clear, direct language is the antidote to this poison. Phrases like, this conversation is over, or I don't need to justify myself, are acts of radical clarity. They refuse to enter the fog. They refuse to play the game of mental gymnastics. You are planting a flag in the solid ground of reality and refusing to be drawn into their swamp of confusion. By refusing to engage in their games, you render them powerless. Their control mechanisms depend entirely on your participation. Once you withdraw that participation, their tactics are revealed for what they are: pathetic and transparent attempts at manipulation. Boundaries force them to confront a reality that is not of their own making, and this is a territory where they are weak and ineffective. There is a powerful psychological phenomenon that occurs when you respond to a narcissist's chaos with unshakable calm. Your centered response acts as a mirror. Narcissists are masters of projection. They take the undesirable parts of themselves, their rage, their incompetence, their duplicity, and project them onto you. They accuse you of being angry when they are the ones raging. They call you manipulative when they are the ones playing games. This allows them to dissound their own darkness. But when you respond with calm, assertive truth, you interrupt this process. You refuse to accept the projection. You hold up a mirror, and the ugliness they tried to cast onto you is reflected directly back at them. Your calm highlights their chaos. Your rationality illuminates their irrationality. Your integrity exposes their lack of it. This mirroring effect forces them, for a brief and horrifying moment, to see themselves as they are. The discomfort this creates is immense. They are confronted with an accurate reflection of their own dysfunctional state, and it is a sight they cannot bear. Your refusal to be their emotional dumping ground forces them to sit in their own mess. This is not merely a battle of wits or a psychological game. It has a real, tangible impact on a biological level. When you enforce a firm boundary with a narcissist who is accustomed to absolute compliance, you trigger a profound stress response in their system. Their brain, which is wired to seek control and validation, suddenly encounters an immovable obstacle. This is processed not as a disagreement, but as a threat to their survival, the survival of the false self. The result is a massive activation of their sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Their cortisol levels spike. Their heart rate increases. They are neurologically incapable of processing direct, calm confrontation because it short circuits their entire manipulative apparatus. This is why they often react with either explosive rage fight or by abruptly shutting down and withdrawing flight. They are, in a very real sense, cornered. Your calm, boundary, setting words have pushed them into a state of neurological panic from which their only escape is aggression or retreat. This isn't just theory, it is the biological basis for why these verbal techniques are so powerfully effective. Listen carefully, the most powerful words in the world are useless if you say them at the wrong time, in the wrong way, or from the wrong emotional state. Timing isn't everything, it's the only thing that matters when you're dealing with someone who spent their entire life manipulating language. Before you ever open your mouth to utter a single one of these boundary-setting phrases, you must first master your own internal state. Your greatest weapon is not your vocabulary, it is your emotional regulation. Think of the narcissist's manipulative behavior as a hurricane of chaos. It is designed to pull you into its vortex, to make you spin with rage, fear, and confusion. And as long as you are spinning, you are lost. Your task is to become the eye of that storm. You must find the point of absolute calm within yourself while the tempest rages around you. This is not some esoteric, mystical advice. It is the most practical, strategically vital preparation you can undertake. How do you do this? You start by learning to recognize the physiological signs of your own emotional arousal. The tightened chest, the shallow breath, the racing heart. These are signals from your ancient reptilian brain that you are under threat. You must not act from this place. This is the state of reaction, not response. Before the difficult conversation you know is coming, you must consciously and deliberately center yourself. Find a quiet space. Breathe. And I don't mean just breathing, I mean physiological regulation. Slow, deep, diaphragmatic breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This simple act sends a signal to your nervous system that you are not, in fact, about to be eaten by a predator. It pulls you out of the primitive fight or flight mode and allows your prefrontal cortex, the rational, thinking part of your brain, to come back online. You must speak from a place of inner strength, not from a place of panicked reaction. The power of your words is directly proportional to the calm from which they are delivered. Once you have mastered your internal state, you must learn to read the external one. You do not deploy these verbal weapons indiscriminately. That would be like firing a cannon without aiming. You must become a student of the person you are dealing with. Recognize that their behavior is not random, it is cyclical. There are patterns. There are moments of grandiosity where they are impenetrable, and there are moments of insecurity and desperation, often following a narcissistic injury, where they are far more vulnerable to the truth. Your job is to identify these patterns. Watch their defensive maneuvers. Do they lash out when criticized? Do they play the victim when held accountable? Do they create chaos when they feel ignored? These are their tells, their predictable moves in the psychological chess game. You must stop allowing them to choose the time and place of conflict. They will try to ambush you when you are tired, when you are distracted, when you are publicly exposed. Your task is to refuse engagement on their terms. You wait. You observe. You choose the moment. You deliver your message, not in the heat of their manufactured crisis, but in a quiet moment of your choosing when your words will have the maximum possible impact. Timing your response is not about manipulation. It's about strategy. It's about ensuring your words land on fertile ground where they can disrupt the narcissist's psychological equilibrium most effectively, rather than being deflected by their fully engaged defenses. Now, let's talk about the delivery itself. You may have heard of the 55-38-7 rule of communication. It's a rough psychological heuristic, but it points to a fundamental truth. People receive communication through 3 channels. Only 7% of a message's impact comes from the words themselves. 38% comes from the tone of your voice, and a staggering 55% comes from your body language. You can speak the most powerful words of truth, but if your body is hunched in fear and your voice is trembling with anxiety, the message received will be one of weakness. Your physical presence must reinforce your verbal one. This is the difference between aggressive and assertive delivery. Aggression is leaning in, raising your voice, using sharp, jabbing gestures. It is a posture of attack. Assertiveness is different. It is calm, grounded, and immovable. It is standing up straight with your shoulders back, as we've discussed. It is maintaining steady, unwavering eye contact, not as a challenge, but as a simple statement of presence. Your vocal tone should be low, steady, and measured. Not a whisper, but not a shout. Think of the tone a doctor uses when delivering a serious but factual diagnosis. There's no anger, no panic. Only the calm weight of reality. You must embody the boundary before you speak it. Your body and your tone must communicate. I am not a threat, but I am also not a target. I am an immovable fact. This congruent communication is something the narcissist's psyche is simply not equipped to handle. Setting the boundary is the battle. The follow-through is the war. And you must understand this the moment you set a real boundary, the narcissist will test it. They will test it immediately, and they will test it with everything they have. This is a psychological phenomenon known as an extinction burst. When a behavior that used to get a reward suddenly stops getting it, the creature will perform that behavior more intensely and frequently before it finally gives up. They will escalate. They will rage. They will love bomb. They will play the victim. They will do anything and everything to see if your new boundary is real or if it was just a bluff. Your consistency in this period is absolutely crucial. If you state a boundary and then retreat from it under pressure, you have taught them something catastrophic that your no can be turned into a yes with enough force. You must maintain your position. Hold the line. This testing period is when the real change happens. Your steadfastness is what rewires the dynamic. Finally, you must learn the power of not speaking at all after you have stated your boundary. I won't be spoken to that way, or this conversation is over. The most powerful thing you can do is shut your mouth. Silence is a vacuum, and narcissists are pathologically incapable of tolerating a vacuum. They need constant engagement, constant reaction. Your silence is deeply unnerving to them. They will rush to fill it, and in their panic attempt to get a reaction from you, they will often reveal their hand, expose their motives, and demonstrate their desperation. A strategic pause before you answer a provocative question can unnerve them. Holding your silence after they've had an outburst can amplify their own sense of ridiculousness. Do not mistake this for passivity. Strategic silence is an active tool. It is you in complete control, making them confront the echo of their own empty words. Here's what nobody tells you about standing up to a narcissist. It gets worse before it gets better. They're going to test every single boundary you set, push every button you have, and try to make you regret the day you found your voice. But here's the thing. If you're prepared for this, their desperation becomes your victory. The moment you implement a firm, consistent boundary, you must brace yourself for a storm. Their manipulative behavior will not just continue, it will likely escalate dramatically. This isn't a sign that your strategy is failing. On the contrary, it is the first sign that it is working. This phenomenon is known in behavioral psychology as an extinction burst. Think of it this way. Imagine a rat in a cage that has learned that pressing a lever delivers a food pellet. It has pressed the lever 1,000 times, and 1,000 times it has been rewarded. Now you switch off the mechanism. The rat presses the lever, and nothing happens. Does it simply walk away? No, it will press the lever again and again, and again, more frantically and aggressively than ever before. It will pound on the lever, fight it, and throw its whole body against it. The behavior intensifies right before it is extinguished. The narcissist is that rat. Their disrespectful behavior, their insults, their gaslighting, their emotional manipulation is the lever they have pressed 1,000 times to get what they want from you: compliance, attention, control. Your new boundary is the moment you switch off the mechanism. Their subsequent escalation is the extinction burst. They are redoubling their efforts, using the only strategy they know, because it has always worked in the past. They are not merely angry. They are in a state of profound psychological panic. You have disrupted their most fundamental tool for navigating the world. You must understand this escalation not as a personal assault, but as a predictable, mechanical response. The intensity of their backlash is a direct measure of how effective your boundary has been. The extinction burst will manifest in a variety of predictable, desperate tactics. You need to be able to identify them, not so you can counter each one, but so you can recognize them for what they are: the desperate thrashing of a drowning manipulator. First, they may attempt love bombing. Suddenly, they will become the person you always wanted them to be. They will be charming, apologetic, and attentive. They will shower you with gifts and praise. This is not a change of heart. It is a calculated tactic to lower your defenses and pull you back into the dysfunctional dynamic. It is the most insidious form of manipulation because it preys on your hope. When that fails, they will almost certainly launch a smear campaign. They will go to your friends, your family, your colleagues, anyone who will listen, and assassinate your character. They will paint you as unstable, cruel, abusive, or insane. They are experts at playing the victim, and they will recruit allies, or flying monkeys, as they're often called, to do their bidding and apply pressure on you to return to your submissive role. Next comes direct emotional manipulation. They will leverage guilt, tell you how much you've hurt them, how you've abandoned them in their time of need. They will engage in profound displays of self-pity designed to trigger your empathy and make you feel responsible for their pain. And when none of that works, they will resort to threats, ultimatums, and punishment. They might threaten the relationship, your financial security, or your access to your children. They will try to punish you for your insolence by giving you the silent treatment or withholding affection. These are the desperate, last-ditch power plays of someone who has lost control and is trying to regain it through brute force. So how do you withstand this onslaught? The answer is as simple as it is difficult. You hold the line. You must become an immovable object. Your greatest asset during this storm is the same one you used to set the boundary in the first place: your calm, regulated internal state. You must not get drawn back into arguments. You do not defend yourself against the smear campaign. You do not negotiate with emotional terrorism. When they rage, you remain calm. When they accuse, you remain silent. When they threaten, you repeat the boundary. This conversation is over. I won't be spoken to that way. Your consistency is your shield. This is a time when external support becomes absolutely critical. You cannot weather this storm alone. You need at least one person, a trusted friend, a family member, a therapist, who understands the dynamic and can serve as your anchor to reality when the gaslighting gets intense. It is also wise, though it may seem cynical, to document everything. Save the abusive text messages. Write down the dates and times of manipulative conversations. This is not for them. It is for you. It is your objective record that you can turn to when their campaign of confusion makes you begin to doubt your own memory and sanity. If you can hold your position with unwavering consistency, something will eventually happen. The storm will break. The extinction burst cannot last forever. It is too psychologically and emotionally expensive. You will reach a breaking point. Not your breaking point, but theirs. You will begin to notice a shift. The active, frantic resistance will begin to subside, replaced by a kind of grudging compliance. They may not like the new reality, but they will begin to accept that it is the new reality. They will start to treat you with a baseline of caution, testing the new boundaries less frequently, like a dog that has learned which fences are electric. This is where one of two things will happen. In some rare cases, the relationship may actually improve. Having been forced to abandon their manipulative tactics, the narcissist may find a new, healthier way to relate to you, and a new, more authentic dynamic can be built on a foundation of respect. But in many cases, they will not. Unable to control you, they may simply lose interest. The relationship will wither and die because its entire foundation, their ability to manipulate you, has been removed. You must be prepared for this. You must make peace with either outcome, because the victory here is not in salvaging the relationship. The victory is in salvaging yourself. The goal is not to fix them. It is to establish a reality in which you can live with peace and integrity, whether they are in it or not. When you finally learn to speak to narcissists from a place of genuine strength, something remarkable happens. You don't just change how they treat you, you change who you are. And that transformation is so profound that it affects every relationship in your life. The act of standing up to a tyrant, even a petty household one, is no small thing. It is the oldest story of humanity, the confrontation with the dragon. For years, perhaps a lifetime, the narcissistic dynamic has been the dragon guarding the hoard of your own self-worth. It has paralyzed you with its fiery breath of criticism and its suffocating coils of manipulation. To finally face it, to speak the words of truth, and hold your ground. This is to slay that dragon. And when you do that, you don't just get the goal. You are fundamentally transformed by the act of confrontation itself. Your entire self-concept, the very story you tell yourself about who you are, is rewritten. You are no longer the frightened villager hiding from the beast. You are the hero who faced it. The confidence that arises from this is not the flimsy, inflated confidence of the ego. It is the deep, grounded confidence that comes only from voluntary confrontation with what you fear. It is the confidence born of experience. You learn in your very bones that you can withstand the storm. You learn that you can define your own reality and defend its borders. And here's the crucial part. This skill is not specific to one person. It is a universal tool. The ability to set a firm boundary, to speak an uncomfortable truth, to say no, and mean it. Once you have forged this tool in the fires of a narcissistic relationship, you can carry it with you everywhere. The chronic people-pleasing, the desperate, knowing need for approval from others, it begins to wither and die. It has to. Because that part of you, the part that would sacrifice your own integrity for a scrap of validation, is what fed the dragon in the first place. Its death is the necessary precondition for your own rebirth. Once you begin to embody this authentic authority, you become a walking filter. Your very presence begins to sort the people in your life into two distinct categories, and the process can be as brutal as it is liberating. You must be prepared for this. The healthy, integrated, competent people in your life will respond to your newfound strength with respect. They will appreciate your clarity. They will be relieved that they no longer have to walk on eggshells around your dysfunctional dynamic. Your relationships with these people will deepen, becoming more honest and robust. They will see you for who you are becoming, and they will celebrate it because strength respects strength. But the unhealthy people, the manipulators, the codependents, the ones who quietly benefited from your lack of boundaries, they will react with hostility. Your strength is a direct threat to them. Exposes their own manipulative. Yes, they will call you selfish. They will call you cruel. They will accuse you of having changed, and they will mean it as the most damning insult. And you have to understand that they are right. You have changed. You have ceased to be a person who is useful to their pathology. Some of these relationships will not survive this recalibration, and you must have the courage to see this not as a loss, but as a necessary and healthy pruning. You are cleaning house. You are learning to enjoy the profound satisfaction of respect that has been earned, not the fleeting relief of approval that has been begged for. Having survived a narcissistic dynamic is like having had a serious illness. It's a brutal experience, but it confers a powerful immunity. You develop a kind of psychological radar, an internal early warning system for manipulative behavior. You will never be made in the same way again. The subtle boundary tests, the overly effusive flattery of the love bomber, the slight twist of reality in a gaslighting comment, you will spot these things instantly. They will ring a bell of recognition deep in your psyche. You will feel it in your gut. This is the wisdom that is forged in fire. This immunity means that you no longer allow toxic dynamics to take root. You set boundaries from the very beginning of any new relationship, whether personal or professional. You don't wait for disrespect to escalate because you have seen firsthand how that story ends. Your standards for treatment are clear and non-negotiable from day one. You are no longer playing checkers, you are playing chess. You see the whole board, you anticipate the manipulative moves, and you refuse to engage in a game that you know is rigged. This isn't cynicism, it's competence. It's the hard, one experience that allows you to navigate the social world with clarity and strength, protecting your sovereignty as a matter of course. This transformation has an effect that ripples outward far beyond your own life. You don't have to preach a single sermon. Your very existence becomes the lesson. By living with authentic authority, you model a new way of being for everyone around you. Your friends, your colleagues, even your own children see what it means to have a spine. They see what it looks like when a person refuses to be defined by another's dysfunction. This is an incredibly powerful form of teaching. Your courage gives them courage. They see that it is possible to stand up, to speak the truth, and to survive. In doing so, you offer them a map out of their own prisons. This is how generational patterns of abuse and dysfunction are broken. It only takes one person in a family line to say, no more. The game stops with me. By refusing to participate in the pathology, by refusing to pass it down to your own children, you are altering the future. You are taking on the profound and sacred responsibility of clearing the toxic ground so that something new and healthy can grow in its place. Your personal battle becomes a legacy of freedom for others. Finally, it is essential to understand what this new strength is for. The goal is not to become aggressive or to go looking for conflict. A person who is truly strong, who is truly dangerous, has no need to constantly prove it. The objective is to become a peaceful warrior. This is the individual who has a sword, knows how to use it, but keeps it sheathed. You carry your capacity for confrontation and boundary, setting not as a weapon of first resort, but as a tool to be used with precision and only when necessary. This is the balance between boundaries and compassion. Your newfound authority is not for dominating others. It is for creating a safe and stable space around you where you and the people you care about can thrive. It is for protecting the integrity of your own being so that you can engage with the world from a place of genuine warmth and strength, not from a place of fear. The responsibility that comes with this knowledge is immense. It is the responsibility to live truthfully, to carry your strength with wisdom, and to be a force for order and integrity in a world that is tilting toward chaos. The most dangerous predator isn't the one that roars. It's the one that convinces you it's a victim while it systematically dismantles your reality. And you might be living with one, you might be related to one, you might not even know it's happening until you're a shell of your former self. That's a hell of a realization. It's not the monster outside the door you need to fear most. It's the one who sits quietly at your table, cloaked in suffering, inviting your sympathy and feeding on your confusion. Let's start with a fundamental idea. One that's true, by the way, society is, at its best, a hierarchy of competence. The person who can do the thing gets to be at the top. That's fair. That's how it should be. But there's another kind of hierarchy, the darker one. It's a hierarchy of victimhood. The person who can claim the most suffering, the most grievance, they get the moral high ground. And from that high ground, they can wreak absolute havoc. That's not competence. That's something else entirely. That's the perversion of the very structure that keeps society functional, and it's a game that's being played more and more, especially in the shadows of our homes. And the female covert narcissist, well, she's the undisputed queen of that bloody hierarchy. She's not a number one lobster because of competence. She's a number one lobster because she's perfected the art of appearing to be the most oppressed lobster. And that's a hell of a strategy, isn't it? Because it makes you feel guilty for even questioning it. You start to doubt your own perceptions. You start to wonder if you're the problem. That's the trap. And it's a trap that's almost impossible to see until you're tangled in it, gasping for clarity, wondering when you started losing yourself. You might not have the words for it. You might not have the psychological theory. But you know what it feels like? It's that feeling of walking on eggshells. It's that feeling of being perpetually in the wrong, but you can't for the life of you figure out what you did. It's the feeling of being exhausted after a simple conversation. You know that feeling. You bloody well know it. It's the psychic fatigue that creeps in, the kind that makes you question your own sanity, your own worth, your own goodness. And it's not an accident. It's by design. Let's not mince words. This is a form of predation. But it's not the kind that's easy to spot. It's not a wolf at the door. It's a smiling dragon, pale coiled, eyes bright, offering you comfort with one hand and taking your soul with the other. And the worst part, the world applauds her for it. She's the saint, the martyr, the one who suffered so much. How dare you question her motives? How dare you even think for a moment that she might be the architect of your misery? So here's a question for you, and I want you to think about this. Maybe you can tell me in the comments, when have you felt a profound sense of unease, a sense of being drained around someone everyone else considers to be an absolute saint? What was that like? What did it do to you? Because that's the feeling I'm talking about. It's not just discomfort. It's a kind of psychic erosion. It's the slow death of your confidence, your clarity, your sense of self. And why don't you see it? Why do we fall for it? It's simple. Because you're a decent person. You're wired to help someone who's suffering. You see someone in pain, you offer a hand. It's the right thing to do. But what if the suffering is a performance? What if the vulnerability is a weapon? Then your decency, your empathy becomes the very tool she uses to control you. It's a perversion of virtue. And it's absolutely pathological. That's the game, and it's a game that's played in the dark, under the table, behind the mask of goodness. Let's dig deeper. There's a reason this strategy works so well. It's because it hijacks your most noble instincts. You want to help. You want to believe the best. You want to be the person who stands up for the downtrodden. But what if the downtrodden is actually the one holding the whip? What if the cries for help are really the calls of a predator, luring you closer, binding you tighter, until you can't tell where your responsibility ends and her manipulation begins? This is the chaos in a victim's cloak. The smiling dragon doesn't need to shout. She doesn't need to threaten. She just needs to sigh, to weep, to tell her story with trembling lips and watery eyes. And the world gathers around her, offering sympathy, offering protection, offering you up as the villain. You become the scapegoat, the one who never understands, the one who always makes things worse. And every time you try to assert yourself, every time you try to draw a line, the guilt tightens around your neck like a noose. It's a subtle, insidious form of warfare. And it leaves scars that are invisible to everyone but you. The chaos isn't in the shouting or the fighting. It's in the silence, the cold shoulder, the carefully crafted sigh. The stories told behind your back, stories that paint you as the monster and her as the innocent. And you start to believe it because everyone else does. That's the real danger. That's the real hell. You might ask, how does this happen? How does someone become this way? It's a fair question. And the answer is complicated. Maybe it's a learned survival strategy honed over years of watching what works. Maybe it's a response to genuine suffering twisted into something unrecognizable by resentment and fear. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the dark side of human nature, the part we all carry, but few dare to acknowledge. The part that says, if I can't win by being strong, I'll win by being weak. If I can't climb the hierarchy of competence, I'll rule the hierarchy of suffering. But whatever the cause, the effect is the same. The smiling dragon takes and takes and takes, and the world calls her generous for it. She wounds and wounds and wounds, and the world calls her wounded. She destroys, and the world calls her a creator. And you're left picking up the pieces, wondering when you became the villain in your own story. So what do? How do you fight a dragon that wears a mask of innocence? The first step is to see it, to name it, to refuse to play the game. That's not easy. In fact, it might be the hardest thing you ever do, because it means standing against the tide. It means risking the loss of approval, the loss of love, the loss of belonging. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is to lose yourself, to become a ghost in your own life, haunted by the smile of the dragon who calls herself your savior. You have to reclaim your reality. You have to trust your own perceptions, even when everyone else tells you you're wrong. You have to draw boundaries, even when it feels like betrayal. You have to remember that your empathy is a gift, not a weakness. And you have to be willing to walk away, to let the world believe what it wants, if that's what it takes to save your soul. This is not a call to cynicism. It's a call to discernment, to wisdom, to the kind of strength that doesn't roar, but stands firm in the face of manipulation. The smiling dragon will not thank you for it. The world may not thank you for it, but your future self will. The part of you that remembers what it's like to breathe freely, to speak honestly, to live without fear. So we've established that this creature exists, this smiling dragon. But how does it operate? What are the specific, insidious games it plays? Well, the first and most powerful is the weaponization of her own supposed goodness. And that's what we need to unpack next. There is no tyrant more absolute than the one who rules from a throne of perpetual self-sacrifice. Because every act of kindness you receive from them is not a gift, it's a debt. It's a link in a chain they are forging around you. And you know it, somewhere deep inside, you feel it, you sense it, even if you can't quite articulate it. Every favor, every gesture, every so-called act of generosity, there's a price. But the price is never named. It's always hanging in the air, like a storm that never breaks, and you're left waiting, bracing for the thunderclap that you know is coming. She will construct a narrative of her life where she is the perpetual victim of slights, injustices, and betrayals. And she's brilliant at it. She'll weave together stories from her past, embellish minor incidents, and present a tapestry of tragedy that is just believable enough. It's not an obvious lie. It's not even a grand performance. It's 1,000 small wounds, each one shown to you with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes. It's designed to do one thing, elicit your sympathy. Because sympathy is power. Sympathy is leverage. Sympathy is the currency of the covert narcissist. And she spends it with ruthless efficiency. And you, if you're decent, if you're wired for compassion, are the perfect mark. You want to help. You want to heal. You want to believe that your support, your presence, your love can make a difference. But what you don't realize is that your sympathy is being weaponized against you. Every time you offer comfort, every time you offer understanding, you're stepping a little further into the quicksand. And she's watching, measuring, calculating exactly how much you'll give before you break. She'll do things for you. Oh, absolutely. She'll offer help you didn't ask for. She'll give you gifts that have strings attached you can't see. It's like she's offering you a chalice of what looks like water when you're wandering in the desert. But it's poisoned with unspoken expectation. The moment you assert your independence, she'll bring up every single sacrifice she's ever made for you. After all I've done for you. Does that sound familiar? It should. Because that's the refrain of the martyr, the eternal victim, the one who never lets you forget what you owe. And here's the real kicker, the world applauds her for it. The world sees her as selfless, as giving, as the very embodiment of goodness. And you're the ingrate. You're the one who takes her for granted. You're the one who never appreciates her sacrifices. It's a rigged game, and you're playing with loaded dice. You know, there's this profound idea in the West of the Redeemer who takes the suffering of the world onto himself. That's a noble ideal. The voluntary acceptance of responsibility. But this is the shadow of that. This is its demonic inversion. It's the involuntary imposition of responsibility onto others disguised as self-sacrifice. She makes you responsible for her happiness, her stability, her emotional state. And that is a burden that will crush you. It's a journey to hell paved with the best intentions and lined with the gravestones of your own boundaries. Let's talk about the poisoned chalice. Because this is the mechanism, this is the machinery that keeps the whole system running. She'll offer you something. Help, advice, a listening ear. And you'll take it because you're polite, because you're grateful, because you were raised to accept kindness with humility. But what you don't see is the invisible ledger she's keeping. Every act of generosity is an entry in the book. And one day, when you least expect it, she'll present you with the bill. It's subtle. It's insidious. It's the kind of manipulation that leaves no fingerprints. You start to feel guilty for wanting anything for yourself. You start to feel selfish for needing space, for asserting your own needs, for daring to imagine a life that isn't entirely in service to her suffering. And that's exactly where she wants you, confused, guilty, off balance. Because a person who's constantly apologizing is a person who's easy to control. It's a brilliant strategy if you think about it. The overt narcissist demands attention, demands obedience, demands adoration. The covert narcissist demands nothing, at least not directly. She simply suffers. She simply endures. She simply gives. And in doing so, she creates a debt that you can never repay. Because the goal isn't repayment. The goal is perpetual obligation. The goal is to keep you tethered, to keep you dancing to the tune of her unspoken needs. And what happens if you refuse? What happens if you say no? The mask slips. The martyr becomes the persecutor. Suddenly, you're the villain. Suddenly, you're the one causing her pain, her anxiety, her endless nights of suffering. She'll tell anyone who will listen about your cruelty, your selfishness, your lack of gratitude. And the world, trying to believe in her narrative of endless giving, will nod along. They'll shake their heads at your heartlessness. They'll offer her the sympathy you've withdrawn, and you'll be left, once again, on the outside, wondering how you became the bad guy in a story you never agreed to be part of. So what do you do? How do you break the spell? You start by refusing to drink from poison chalice. You learn to say, thank you, but no. You learn to distinguish between a genuine act of kindness and a transaction. You stop feeling guilty for wanting something for yourself. You stop apologizing for having needs, for having boundaries, for having a life that isn't defined by her suffering. And here's the hard part. You have to be willing to be seen as the villain. You have to be willing to let her tell her story, to let her play the martyr, to let the world believe what it wants. Because the alternative is to spend your life in servitude to someone else's endless hunger for validation, for attention, for control. And that's not compassion. That's not love. That's self-annihilation. You have to reclaim your own narrative. You have to remember that your empathy is a gift, not a weakness. You have to trust your own instincts, even when they run counter to the story everyone else is telling. And you have to be willing to walk away. If that's what it takes to save your soul. There's a reason the martyr's crown is so heavy. It's not meant to be worn. It's meant to be put down. It's meant to be recognized for what it is, a tool of manipulation, a symbol of a game you never agreed to play. And once you see it, once you name it, you can begin the slow, painful process of disentangling yourself from its grip. This isn't easy. It's not supposed to be. Because the chains that bind us are forged in the fires of our own decency, our own compassion, our own desperate hope that we can save someone who doesn't want to be saved. But you can't save someone by sacrificing yourself on the altar of their suffering. You can only drown with them and call it love. So here's the challenge. Here's the call to action. Start saying no. Start drawing lines. Start refusing to play the part of the grateful supplicant. Watch what happens. Watch how the world shifts, how the narrative changes, how the mask slips. It will be uncomfortable. It will be painful, but it will also be liberating. Because the only way to break the spell is to stop believing in it. The only way to escape the martyr's crown is to refuse to wear it. And when you do, when you finally put it down, you'll discover something extraordinary. You'll discover that your life is your own. That your worth isn't measured by your willingness to suffer for someone else's story. That your empathy, your kindness, your love are gifts to be given freely, not debts to be collected. And that, in the end, is the only kind of freedom worth having. That's the truth at the heart of the poisoned chalice. That's the lesson the smiling dragon never wants you to learn. But once you do, once you see the game for what it is, you can never unsee it. And that, my friends, is the beginning of the end. The end of the tyranny of self-sacrifice. The end of the endless debt. The beginning of a life defined not by obligation, but by choice, by dignity, by the courage to say enough. What happens when the person you trust the most is the person who is actively working to make you believe you're insane? That's not a rhetorical question. That's the kind of question that cracks open the floor beneath your feet and leaves you dangling over the abyss. And if you've ever found yourself doubting your own memory, your own judgment, your own sanity, especially in the presence of someone who claims to love you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's not a trivial thing. That's soul murder. You have to understand this. The most potent weapon in the human arsenal is the ability to be articulate, to speak the truth, to put the world into words. That's how we orient ourselves. That's how we make sense of chaos. That's how we build civilization, brick by bloody brick. But what's the opposite of that? What's the shadow side? It's the ability to use words not to clarify, but to obscure, to confuse, to create a fog so thick you can't find your own feet. That's the labyrinth. And the female covert narcissist is its keeper. Let's get brutally practical. You confront her with a simple, concrete issue, something that should take 5 minutes to resolve. And what do you get back? Not a conversation, not a solution, but a barrage of accusations, historical grievances, irrelevant details, and circular arguments. It's like stepping into a maze where every path leads back to the beginning and the exit keeps moving just out of reach. That's not an accident. That's a tactic. It's word salad, verbal smokescreen designed to exhaust you, to make you give up, to make you question why you ever brought it up in the first place. You walk away feeling like you've been in a fight, but you don't even know what it was about. You're battered, bewildered, and somehow you're the one apologizing. That's the point. The point is to wear you down, to make you so tired of the battle that you stop fighting altogether. And then she wins. Not because she was right, but because you surrendered your reality for the sake of peace. But there's a more sinister element. The denial of your reality. I never said that. You're being too sensitive. You're crazy. It's not just a disagreement. It is an assault on your sanity. It's an attempt to erase your perception of the truth. And if you let it happen long enough, you start to believe it. You lose trust in your own mind. That's a terrible, terrible place to be. That's the real cost of gaslighting. It's not just confusion. It's the slow, relentless erosion of your confidence in your own judgment. It's a psychological death by 1,000 cuts. Let's talk about gaslighting for a minute, because that term gets thrown around a lot, but it's important to understand what it actually means. Gaslighting isn't just lying. It's a systematic campaign to undermine your sense of reality. It's the deliberate rewriting of history, the constant shifting of blame, the subtle insinuations that you're unstable, untrustworthy, unhinged. It's not just about winning an argument. It's about making you doubt your own mind so completely that you become dependent on her version of events. That's not a relationship. That's psychological captivity. And here's the thing, the more intelligent, empathetic, and conscientious you are, the more vulnerable you are to this kind of manipulation. Because you're willing to question yourself. You're willing to consider the possibility that you might be wrong. That's a virtue. But in the hands of a covert narcissist, it becomes a weapon. She exploits your openness, your humility, your desire for truth, and turns it against you. That's a perversion of the very qualities that make you human. Rule 9 in my book says, assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. Well, this is the exception that proves the rule. Sometimes you have to listen to what they're saying to realize they are not communicating, they are obfuscating. You listen not for the content, but for the pattern of confusion, the pattern of blame shifting, the pattern of reality denial. And when you see the pattern, you have to have the courage to name it, even if only to yourself at first. So what do you do? How do you fight back against the keeper of the labyrinth? Here's what you do. You get a pen, you get a notebook, and you start writing things down. What was said? When it was said, you create an external record of reality, because you cannot trust your memory when someone is actively trying to corrupt it. Make a damn log. It's not paranoia, it's self-preservation. Let's get even more practical. When you're in the middle of one of these foggy, circular conversations, stop trying to win. Stop trying to convince her. That's not the point. The point is to stay anchored in your own reality. Take notes. Summarize what was said. Repeat it back. So what I'm hearing is, force the conversation into the light. Don't let it drip into the shadows where confusion reigns. And if she refuses to engage honestly, if she doubles down on the obfuscation, that's your answer. That's all the information you need. And here's something else. Talk to someone you trust. Someone outside the labyrinth. Someone who knows you, who can remind you of what's real. Isolation is the covert narcissist's greatest ally. She wants you alone, confused, dependent. Don't give her that power. Reach out. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. The act of articulating your experience is itself an act of resistance. It's a way of reclaiming your reality one word at a time. So let's not be named. This isn't going to be easy. The keeper of the labyrinth doesn't give up her power willingly. She'll escalate. She'll accuse you of being controlling, of being abusive, of being the very monster she's become. That's projection. That's another tactic. Don't take the bait. Stay grounded. Stay clear. Remember who you are and why you're fighting. You're fighting for your sanity, for your soul, for the right to know what's true. There's a reason why language is at the heart of this battle. Because language is how we make sense of the world. It's how we build meaning, how we connect, how we heal. When that's corrupted, when words are used as weapons instead of bridges, the damage is profound. It's not just confusion. It's existential disorientation. It's the loss of the very ground beneath your feet. But there's hope. There's always hope, because the antidote to confusion is clarity. The antidote to gaslighting is truth. The antidote to isolation is connection. You don't have to solve the whole labyrinth in a day. You just have to take the next step. Write the next sentence. Speak the next truth. And little by little, the fog will lift. So the call to action is simple, but not easy. Document everything. Refuse to surrender your reality. Reach out for support. And above all, trust yourself. The keeper of the labyrinth may be cunning, but she's not invincible. The truth is on your side, and that is a weapon more powerful than any word salad, any gaslighting, any attempt to erase your reality. Stand firm. Speak clearly, and watch as the walls of the labyrinth begin to crumble. Because in the end, reality always wins. And so can you. You would think that someone who claims to love you would want the best for you. But what if your success is a direct judgment on their own stagnation? What if your light makes their darkness more apparent? That's not just a philosophical question. That's a fundamental reality for anyone who's ever been entangled with a female covert narcissist. The moment you begin to rise, to grow, to become more than you were yesterday, you threaten the fragile order she's constructed around her own sense of inadequacy. And that's when the real games begin. This isn't simple jealousy. It's deeper. It's the kind of resentment that Cain felt for Abel. Why him and not me? It's the hatred of the good for being good. That's a terrifying thing, because it means your very existence, when you're doing well, when you're aiming up, becomes an indictment of her own refusal to change. When you achieve something, a promotion, a new relationship, a personal insight, don't expect genuine celebration. Expect a backhanded compliment. Expect the goalpost to be moved. Oh, that's nice, but have you thought about it? They'll subtly diminish your accomplishments to protect their own fragile ego. It's not a conscious strategy, at least not always. It's a reflex, a survival mechanism. But it's deadly all the same. You start to notice it in the little things. You share good news, and instead of joy, you get a sigh, a worried look, a story about how your success might bring unforeseen problems. Are you sure you're ready for that promotion? It seems very stressful. It sounds like concern, doesn't it? But it's not. It's a strategic injection of anxiety designed to make you fail, so you'll come crawling back to her for comfort. It's the green-eyed dragon of envy, lurking just beneath the surface, always ready to strike. Jung talked about archetypes, these ancient patterns that live within us. One of the most powerful is the Great Mother. She has two sides: the nurturing, life-giving mother, and the terrible mother, the one who devours her own young, who refuses to let them grow up, who keeps them dependent and weak, because their strength is a threat to her dominion. The female covert narcissist is the embodiment of that devouring archetype. She doesn't want you to be strong and independent. She wants you crippled and reliant on her, because that's the only way she can maintain control. She'll encourage your weaknesses and subtly sabotage your strengths. It's insidious. She'll offer you help that actually undermines you. She'll give you advice that sows seeds of doubt. She'll cloak her sabotage in the language of care. I just worry about you, that's all. Maybe you're taking on too much. The message is clear. Don't get too big. Don't get too bold. Don't outgrow the box I built for you. Because if you do, you'll leave me behind, and I can't allow that. This dynamic is especially destructive in families. The covert narcissist mother, for example, will pit siblings against each other, rewarding compliance and punishing independence. She'll play favorites, but the favorite is always the one who's most obedient, most willing to stay small. The scapegoat is the one who dares to challenge her authority, who dares to become more. And the tragedy is, the scapegoat is often the healthiest member of the family, the one who sees the dysfunction for what it is, who refuses to participate in the charade, but it doesn't stop at home. This pattern repeats itself in workplaces, friendships, even romantic relationships. The covert narcissist seeks out talented, ambitious people, not to support them, but to feed off them. She attaches herself to your rising star, but only so she can dim it. She'll undermine your confidence, question your motives, and celebrate your failures with barely concealed satisfaction. I knew it was too much for you. Maybe now you'll listen to me. It's a slow, steady erosion of your sense of agency, your belief in your own potential. And here's the real kicker: the world often can't see it. To outsiders, she's the caring friend, the supportive partner, the devoted mother. Her sabotage is so well disguised, so plausibly deniable, that if you complain, you look ungrateful, even paranoid. She's just trying to help. Why are you being so difficult? That's the genius of the covert narcissist strategy. She weaponizes the very virtues society praises: self-sacrifice, concern, humility. But underneath, it's all about control. So what's the antidote? It's to take the opposite path of what she wants for you. It's to aim high. It's to pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. It's to accept the responsibility of your own potential and to strive to be better. You have to be willing to be seen as ungrateful or selfish in her eyes, because what she calls selfishness is actually your own psychological survival. You have to be willing to disappoint her, to withstand her guilt trips, to endure the loneliness that comes with breaking free from her orbit. That's not easy. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because the covert narcissist is a master at making you doubt yourself, making you feel guilty for wanting more, for being more. But you have to remember, your life is not a referendum on her self-worth. Your success is not a betrayal. Your happiness is not a crime. You have a moral obligation to yourself, to the people who depend on you, to the world, to become everything you're capable of being. And here's the paradox: the more you grow, the more resistance you'll face. The more you assert your independence, the harder she'll fight to pull you back. She'll escalate her tactics, play the victim, recruit allies, manufacture crisis. But that's the price of freedom. That's the cost of becoming who you are. So you have to be strategic. You have to build a support system outside her influence. Friends, mentors, therapists, anyone who can remind you of your value when she tries to tear you down. You have to document her behavior. Keep a record of the subtle digs, the undermining comments, the patterns of sabotage, not because you need to convince anyone else, because you need to convince yourself. You need evidence, a map of the labyrinth, so you don't get lost in the fog of her manipulation. You also have to learn to sit with discomfort, to tolerate the anxiety that comes with stepping out of her shadow, to accept that you might lose her approval, her affection, even her presence in your life. But what you gain is infinitely more valuable: your autonomy, your integrity, your future. And you have to forgive yourself for staying too long, for believing her lies, for shrinking to fit her expectations. You did what you had to do to survive, but now you know better. Now you can do better. This is not just about escaping one toxic person. It's about breaking a cycle that has probably been running for generations. It's about refusing to pass on the legacy of envy, competition, and sabotage. It's about choosing growth over stagnation, truth over comfort, freedom over servitude. So aim up, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Accept the responsibility of your own potential and strive to be better, even if it means being seen as selfish. even if it means walking alone for a while, because the alternative is to live in a cage built by someone else's fear, a cage you were never meant to occupy. And if you do that, if you choose the path of growth, of meaning, of responsibility, you don't just save yourself. You become a beacon for others trapped in the same web. You show them that it's possible to break free, to become more, to live a life that's truly your own. That's the way out. That's the antidote to the devouring mother, to the green-eyed dragon of envy, to the sabotage of your essence. Aim high, aim true, and don't look back. A covert narcissist rarely fights her own battles. Why would she? It's much easier, much more efficient, in fact, to convince a legion of meaning, but knave people to fight them for her. And if you think that's an exaggeration, you haven't seen it play out in real time. You haven't watched your own friends, your own family, your own colleagues become unwitting agents in a campaign designed to isolate, destabilize, and ultimately destroy your credibility. That's not just manipulation. That's psychological warfare. She is a master propagandist. She will carefully curate her image to friends, family, and the community as being gentle, kind, and long-suffering. At the same time, she'll be subtly planting seeds of doubt about me. I'm so worried about him. He's been so angry lately. I don't know what I did. She just seems to have turned against me. She's not making direct accusations. She's crafting a narrative, positioning herself as the victim and you as the unstable aggressor. And the world, for the most part, eats it up. Because as we've established, people are fundamentally decent. They see a woman in distress and they want to help. They become her flying monkeys. To use the pop psychology term, they become her unwitting agents. They'll start to look at you with suspicion. They'll offer you unsolicited advice. They'll report back to her. She isolates you by turning your own support network into her personal surveillance state. This is not a trivial thing. This is the social death penalty. It's not just the narcissist you're dealing with. It's the betrayal of people you thought you could trust. It makes you question the very fabric of your social world. It makes you feel utterly alone, like you're wandering in the desert. And that's exactly where she wants you isolated, powerless, easier to control. Let's break down how this works. First, she identifies your allies, your friends, your family, your colleagues. She approaches them, not with accusations, but with concern. I'm worried about him. He's not himself lately. I'm afraid she's pulling away from everyone. It's always couched in the language of care, of worry, of heartbreak. She's not attacking you. She's just so sad, so confused, so desperate for help. And the people around you, unless they're very wise or very experienced, will believe her. Why wouldn't they? She's never shown them anything but kindness. She's never raised her voice, never lost her temper, never said a harsh word, at least not in public. Then the flying monkeys mobilize. They come to you, not as enemies, but as friends. Are you okay? Is there something going on between you two? Maybe you should talk to her. She seems really upset. It all sounds so reasonable, so compassionate. But underneath, it's a campaign of doubt. Doubt in yourself, doubt in your perceptions, doubt in your own moral standing. You start to wonder, am I the problem? Am I losing my mind? Why does everyone seem to be turning against me? And it doesn't stop there. The covert narcissist will use every tool at her disposal, social media, group chats, family gatherings, workplace rumors, to reinforce her narrative. She'll share carefully selected stories, half-truths, and outright fabrications, always with that same air of wounded innocence. I just don't understand what happened. I wish things could go back to the way they were. She's not asking for retribution. She's asking for sympathy. And sympathy, as we've seen, is power. The result, become the pariah, the scapegoat, the one everyone whispers about, the one everyone avoids, the one whose reputation is slowly, inexorably destroyed. And the more you try to defend yourself, the worse it gets. Because every protest, every attempt to set the record straight is interpreted as aggression, as instability, as proof that you really are the person she says you are. It's a Kafka's nightmare, a trial where the verdict has already been decided, and every word you speak is used as evidence against you. So what do? First, you have to accept the terrible truth. You cannot win in a court of public opinion. Don't even try. Don't engage in the smear campaign. Don't try to defend yourself to her agents. It's like wrestling with a pig in the mud. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it. The more you struggle, the more you sink. The more you protest, the more you confirm her narrative. It's a trap, and the only way out is not to play. Instead, you must do what seems impossible. You speak your truth, calmly and consistently, to the people who are willing to genuinely listen. And you must be willing to let go of the ones who aren't. That's a hell of a thing. It might mean losing friends. It might mean distancing yourself from family. But the alternative is to live in a world of lies, surrounded by people who have chosen to believe a fiction over you. And that's no life at all. This is the crucible. This is the test. Are you willing to stand alone if that's what it takes to preserve your integrity? Are you willing to be misunderstood, to be vilified, to be abandoned, if the cost of belonging is the surrender of your soul? That's the question at the heart of every encounter with a covert narcissist. That's the price of freedom. And here's the paradox. The more you refuse to play the game, the more you reclaim your own power. The more you stand in your own truth, the more you attract people who value honesty, who see through the charade, who are willing to walk with you through the fire. It won't be everyone. It might not even be most people. But it will be enough to remind you that you're not crazy, that you're not alone, that your reality is real. You have to become your own court of appeal. You have to become the judge and jury of your own life. You have to decide for yourself what is true and what is false, what is right and what is wrong, and you have to be willing to live with the consequences of that decision, even if it means walking away from everything you thought you needed. This is not a call to bitterness. It's a call to courage, to clarity, to the kind of strength that refuses to be defined by someone else's narrative. The web of flying monkeys is real, and the court of public opinion is merciless. But you are not powerless. You have the right, the obligation, to speak your truth, to protect your boundaries, to choose your own allies. And if you do that, if you refuse to be cowed, to be silenced, to be erased, you become something more than a survivor. You become a beacon for others trapped in the same web. You show them that it's possible to break free, to reclaim your life, to build a world where truth matters more than appearances. That's the way out. That's the antidote to the web of flying monkeys, to the tyranny of public opinion, to the slow suffocation of your own reality. Speak your truth, stand your ground. Let the chips fall where they may. Because in the end, the only opinion that matters is the one you hold of yourself. And that, in the final analysis, is the foundation of all genuine freedom. Why is it that doing something as simple and necessary as saying no to a covert narcissist feels like you're staring into the abyss? Why does a single word, a single act of self-preservation unleash a storm that threatens to tear your world apart? This isn't just a question of manners or conflict avoidance. This is the existential confrontation at the heart of every relationship poisoned by manipulation. It's the moment you stop playing your assigned role in someone else's tragedy and the whole stage shakes. You have to understand what a boundary represents to her. For you, it's a matter of self-respect. It's mental hygiene. For her, it is a catastrophic existential threat. Her entire identity, her entire world, is built on the premise of her victimhood and your compliance. When you set a boundary, you are saying, your narrative is false. I am not responsible for your emotions. I will not be manipulated. You are single-handedly demolishing the frame of her reality. That's not a minor adjustment. That's heresy. That's revolution. It's like you're in a cult, and you finally refuse to drink the Kool-Aid. The cult leader doesn't just shrug and wish you well. She panics. She rages. She mobilizes every resource to bring you back into the fold. Because if you can say no, if you can walk away, the whole illusion collapses. The mask slips, and what's underneath is not pretty. And what happens when her reality is threatened? She turns to stone, and she tries to turn you to stone. This is the narcissistic rage. It's not normal anger. It is a terrifying volcanic explosion of fury. Or, because she's covered, it might be a terrifying, silent, seething punishment. The silent treatment. The withdrawal of all affection. The cold, dead eyes. It's the gaze of the Gorgon, designed to paralyze you with fear and guilt, to make you retreat from your boundary and restore her world. This is where mythology becomes psychology. The Gorgon in Greek myth turned people to stone with a glance. What does that mean psychologically? It means you become frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to act. You're petrified by the threat of rejection, abandonment, or retaliation. You're caught in a double bind. If you assert yourself, you're punished. If you submit, you lose yourself. That's not a relationship. That's a hostage situation. It's hard because you're programmed to avoid it. Your threat detection system, that ancient circuit in your amygdala, screams at you, danger, danger, retreat. And your compassion, the thing she's cultivated in you for years, screams, you're hurting her, you're being cruel. And so you're caught between your own biological and moral imperatives. It feels like you're ripping yourself in two. No wonder people avoid it. But let's be honest, the pain of avoidance is not less than the pain of confrontation. It's just slower, more corrosive, more insidious. Every time you give in, every time you swallow your truth, every time you let her rewrite reality, you lose a piece of yourself. You become the stone statue in your own life, silent, inert, invisible. Here's the thing, you have to do it. It's the voluntary encounter with what you are most afraid of. It's walking into the dragon's lair. Because the alternative is to allow your soul to be slowly eroded until there's nothing left. The pain of the confrontation is acute, but the pain of submission is chronic and fatal. You must choose the acute pain. You must choose the path of truth, even if it leads through hell for a little while. So how do you do it? How do you set a boundary when every cell in your body is screaming at you to run? You start small, you pick one thing, one word, one action, one refusal. You say, no, I can't do that. And you hold the line. You don't explain, you don't justify, you don't apologize, you just stand there in the fire and let the storm rage. And the storm will rage. She'll try everything. Tears, threats, guilt, silence, rage, charm, smear campaigns. She'll escalate because she has to. Her entire sense of self is at stake. But you don't flinch, you don't argue, you don't try to fix her feelings. You let her have her reaction and you stay rooted in your own reality. This is not cruelty. This is not abandonment. This is self-respect. This is the refusal to participate in your own destruction. This is the only way out of the labyrinth. And it's the only way to give her a chance, however slim, to face her own darkness. Because as long as you enable her, as long as you shield her from the consequences of her actions, you're not helping. You're colluding. You're feeding the monster. You might lose her. You might lose friends, family, status, comfort. That's the price of freedom. That's the cost of authenticity. But what you gain is infinitely more valuable: your own soul, your own voice, your own life. There's a reason the hero in every myth has to face the monster alone. No one can do it for you. No one can save you from the confrontation you most fear. But you can do it. You can look the Gorgon in the eye and refuse to turn to stone. You can choose truth over comfort, reality over illusion, dignity over submission. And when you do, when you finally stand your ground, when you finally say, no more, something miraculous happens. The world doesn't end. The sky doesn't fall. You survive. You discover a strength you didn't know you had. You realize that the Gorgon's power was always an illusion sustained by your own fear. This is not the end of the story. This is the beginning. The beginning of a life built on truth, on boundaries, on self-respect. The beginning of a world where you are no longer the victim, no longer the scapegoat, no longer the stone statue in someone else's nightmare. So here's the call to action: set the boundary. Face the rage. Endure the storm. Reclaim your life from the Gorgon's gaze. You might walk through hell, but you'll come out the other side alive and free. And that, in the final analysis, is worth everything. So you confronted the dragon. You've spoken the truth. And the flood has come. The relationship might be over. The family might be fractured. The world you knew is gone. Now what? Do you drown in the chaos? Or do you build an ark? That's the question at the heart of every real transformation. It's not a metaphor. It's a lived reality. When you finally decide to stop playing the game, to stop enabling the covert narcissist, to stop sacrificing your soul for the sake of peace, the consequences are real. The old structures collapse. The old alliances shatter. You're left standing in the wreckage, wondering if you've made a terrible mistake. The silence is deafening. The loneliness is profound, but that's the price of truth. That's the cost of freedom. The first step in building that ark is the absolute refusal to see yourself as a victim. Yes, a terrible thing was done to you, but to adopt the victim mantle is to become the very thing you just escaped. It's a path to bitterness and resentment. Instead, you have to adopt the opposite attitude. You have to say, my life is now my responsibility. I am responsible for putting the pieces back together, but better than they were before. That's not easy. That's the hardest thing there is, because it means giving up the hope that someone else will come and rescue you. It means staring into the void and deciding, I'll build something out of this even if it kills me. This is where the hard work begins. You start by cleaning your room, metaphorically and literally. You get your damn schedule in order. You figure out what you want your life to look like, a life that justifies its own suffering. You aim for something noble. You aim to be a person of competence and truth. You start with what's right in front of you: the dishes, the laundry, the bills, the job you've been neglecting, the body you've been abusing. You put one brick on top of another, even if your hands are shaking. And you do it without applause. You do it in the dark, when no one is watching. Because rebuilding isn't glamorous. It's not a montage set to inspirational music. It's a slog. It's a grind. It's waking up every day and choosing not to drown. It's refusing to let the chaos pull you under. And it's the only way out. You surround yourself with people who want the best for you. People with whom you can speak the truth. People who will celebrate your victories without envy and call you on your bullshit without malice. That might be a very small number of people at first. That's okay. You need a crew for your arc, not a crowd. You don't need people who will tell you what you want to hear. You need people who will tell you what you need to hear. People who will remind you of who you are when you forget. People who will help you carry the load, not add to it. And you have to be ruthless about this. You have to cut out the saboteurs, the enablers, the people who want you to stay small. That might mean losing friends. That might mean distancing yourself from family. That's a hell of a thing. But the alternative is to keep drowning, to keep living in a world of lies, surrounded by people who have chosen to believe a fiction over you. And that's no life at all. You must become formidable. You become articulate so you can never be trapped by word games again. You develop your competence so your value is undeniable. You integrate your shadow. You understand your own capacity for malevolence, so you can't be easily manipulated by accusations of it. A good man is not a harmless man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has it under voluntary control. You must become the kind of person who can face a dragon and not flinch. This is not about vengeance. This is not about proving them wrong. This is about reclaiming your life. This is about becoming someone who cannot be destroyed by the chaos. Someone who can walk through the fire and come out the other side, not unscathed, but unbroken. Someone who can look back at the ruins and say, I built something better. I became someone better. I turned the flood into an opportunity. And you have to forgive yourself for staying too long, for believing the lies, for shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. You did what you had to do to survive, but now you know better. Now you can do better, and that's all anyone can ask. There's an old idea in the West, the story of Noah, the world is flooded. Everything is destroyed. But one man, through obedience and courage, builds an ark. He saves his family. He preserves life. He becomes the foundation for a new world. That's not just a story about ancient times. That's a psychological truth. When chaos comes, when the old world is swept away, you have a choice: drown or build, victim or creator, resentment or responsibility. And building an ark isn't just about survival. It's about meaning. It's about finding a reason to keep going, even when everything seems hopeless. It's about creating a life that justifies its own suffering. Because the purpose of life is not to avoid suffering. It's to find a meaning that makes the suffering worthwhile. And the meaning is to be found in the voluntary adoption of your own heroic adventure. The adventure of truth. The adventure of becoming the person you could be if you stopped letting the darkness win. You have to become dangerous, but in the right way. Dangerous to the lies. Dangerous to the manipulation. Dangerous to the chaos. Not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you refuse to be hurt anymore. Because you refuse to let anyone else dictate the terms of your existence. Because you know what you're capable of, and you choose to use that power for good. And you have to be patient. Building an ark takes time. Healing takes time. Becoming formidable takes time. There will be days when you want to give up. Days when the floodwaters seem to rise faster than you can bail them out. Days when the loneliness is overwhelming. But you keep going. You keep building. You keep aiming up. And one day, you'll look around and realize you're not in the flood anymore. You're not drowning. You're sailing. You built something that can withstand the storms. You become someone who can weather the chaos. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to help someone else do the same. So go out there and build your bloody ark and see what kind of world you can sail to, because the world needs people who have faced the flood and survived. The world needs people who have turned chaos into order, suffering into meaning, weakness into strength. The world needs you. Not the you who was broken and afraid, but the you who chose to build, to fight, to become. That's the adventure. That's the task. That's the meaning. And it's worth every drop of blood, sweat, and tears. Because the alternative is to drown. And you're not here to drown. You're here to build. You're here to become. You're here to show the world what's possible when you refuse to be a victim, when you refuse to let the darkness win. So pick up your hammer, gather your crew, set your sights on the horizon, and start building. The flood is coming, whether you're ready or not. The only question is, will you be ready? Will you have an ark? Will you have a soul forged in the fire of chaos and made strong by the choice to build, to become, to overcome? That's your task. That's your calling. That's your destiny. And the world is waiting to see what you'll do. The most violent rage is not born from hatred of an enemy, but from the soul-crushing terror of being truly and accurately seen by someone you thought you controlled. What happens when the puppet realizes you can see the strings? You have to understand what the narcissist world is built on. It's a performance. It's a carefully constructed mask, what Jung called a persona, designed to solicit a specific, predictable response from the world: admiration, fear, envy. That's their narcissistic supply. And by God, they need it like a drowning man needs air. This persona isn't just a preference or a style choice. It's their entire existential architecture. Every gesture, every word, every carefully cultivated expression is calculated to maintain this grand illusion. They've spent years, perhaps decades, perfecting this performance. It's become so integral to their being that they can no longer distinguish between the mask and whatever lies beneath it. If anything lies beneath it at all. You, the observer, are supposed to be a predictable mirror, reflecting back the glorious image they project. You're supposed to be an extension of their will, a satellite orbiting their manufactured sun. But the moment you see through them, and I mean really see through them, not just have a fleeting doubt, but achieve that crystalline moment of recognition, the mirror doesn't just stop reflecting, it becomes a judge. Your eyes, which were once a source of validation, now reflect their own emptiness, their own lie back at them. This is not an insult to them, it's an act of profound metaphysical violence. You've shattered the fundamental illusion upon which their entire psychological structure depends. You've committed the ultimate transgression, you've seen the emperor without his clothes, and worse, you've refused to pretend otherwise. Think about this from a biological perspective, a perspective that's a third of a billion years old. Your status in a hierarchy determines your neurochemistry. It determines whether you walk upright or slouch, whether you speak with confidence or mumble, whether you meet the world with courage or cower in the shadows. When you see through the narcissist facade, you are fundamentally challenging their perceived status. You are a subordinate lobster that is suddenly refusing to give way, signaling that their dominance is a fraud. Their brain registers this not as a social disagreement, but as a mortal threat. It's a signal that their position is invalid, which threatens to plunge them into the chaos of the bottom of the hierarchy with all the terror and pain that entails. The neurochemical cascade that follows is nothing short of catastrophic for them. Serotonin plummets. Stress hormones surge. The ancient circuitry of survival activation kicks into overdrive. So I have to ask you this, and be honest with yourself about it. Drop it in the comments if you're willing. Have you ever had a moment where you saw the truth about a situation, a profound and uncomfortable truth, and you chose to stay silent? You chose the lie of omission to avoid the conflict. What storm were you so afraid of that you sacrificed your own voice to prevent it? Because that's what most of us do, isn't it? We see the truth, but we calculate the cost of speaking it, and we decide it's too high. We choose peace over truth, comfort over integrity. And in that choice, we become complicit in the maintenance of the lie. We become enablers of the very tyranny we secretly despise. But something changes when you finally refuse to look away. Something fundamental shifts in the dynamic, and they sense it immediately. They see it in your eyes. A flicker of doubt, a lack of applause where applause was expected, a failure to respond to their manipulation with the expected submission or adoration. They don't immediately explode. No. The first thing they do is test you. It's a probe, a little jab. They'll distort something you said or accuse you of a minor slight. They'll create a small conflict, seemingly out of nowhere, and watch your reaction carefully. They are checking. Did you really see what I think you saw, or can I pull you back in the matrix? This is reconnaissance. They're gathering intelligence about the extent of your awakening. Have you merely stumbled upon an uncomfortable truth by accident, or have you undergone a fundamental transformation in your capacity to see reality? Can they gaslight you back into compliance, or have you developed an immunity to their manipulations? The real battle hasn't started yet. This is just the opening salvo. They're testing the waters, probing for weakness, searching for the crack in your armor through which they can pour their influence and drag you back into the shared delusion. And make no mistake, this is warfare. Not the clean, honorable warfare of the battlefield, but the dirty, psychological warfare of the soul. The stakes couldn't be higher. For them, it's the difference between maintaining their God-like status and facing the abyss of their own emptiness. For you, it's the difference between living in truth and returning to a lie that will slowly poison every aspect of your existence. The moment you truly see them, you become either their destroyer or their accomplice. There is no middle ground. There is no neutral position. You cannot unsee what you have seen, and they cannot unknow that you have seen it. The die is cast, and the consequences will unfold with the inexorable logic of a Greek tragedy. When the initial probes confirm their fear that you genuinely see the truth, they don't retreat. They escalate. They open their entire toolkit of manipulation, and they are masters of these tools. Make no mistake about it, they've had years, perhaps decades, to perfect these weapons of psychological warfare. You'll get gaslighting. That never happened. You're being crazy. You're too sensitive. It's a deliberate attempt to make you distrust your own sanity. They're not trying to change your mind through rational argument. No, that would acknowledge that you have a valid perspective worth addressing. Instead, they're trying to convince you that your mind itself is defective, that your perception of reality is fundamentally flawed. This is perhaps the most insidious form of psychological abuse because it attacks the very foundation of your being, your capacity to trust your own experience. When someone systematically undermines your ability to know what you know, they're not just lying to you, they're teaching you to lie to yourself. They're transforming you into an accomplice in your own deception. You'll get love bombing, a sudden, intense flood of affection and flattery. They are trying to re-seduce you to remind you of the good times, which were also a performance to pull you back into the shared delusion. The whiplash is intentional. One moment, you're the most wonderful person in the world. The next, you're a delusional fool. They're creating emotional chaos, making you desperate for the stability that only their approval can provide. This isn't love. This is intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful conditioning schedule known to psychology. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive. The unpredictable reward creates a neurochemical dependency that's extraordinarily difficult to break. They know this. They've weaponized your own brain chemistry against you. You'll get the word salad. A barrage of circular arguments, accusations, and projections designed to confuse and exhaust you until you give up. They'll throw so many accusations at you that you'll spend all your time defending yourself instead of holding them accountable. They'll accuse you of exactly what they're doing to you: manipulation, lying, abuse. It's projection of the highest order, and it's designed to make you question everything you thought you knew about the situation. The goal here is not clarity. It's confusion. They want to create such a fog of accusations and counter accusations that you lose sight of the original truth that started this whole confrontation. They want you to become so disoriented that you'll accept any resolution, even if it means abandoning your own reality. You have to understand, in this phase, they are not trying to win the argument on its merits. They know they can't, because the truth is not on their side. The goal is to make the price of holding on to the truth so high, so emotionally exhausting, that you will drop it just for a moment's peace. It's a war of attrition against your soul. They're betting that you'll eventually conclude that the truth isn't worth the fight. They're counting on your decency, your desire for harmony, your exhaustion with conflict. They know that reasonable people don't want to live in a state of perpetual warfare, and they're using that against you. They're making the truth so expensive that you'll trade it for a counterfeit peace. This entire phase is a test. It's a series of questions they're asking you non-verbally. How committed are you to this new reality? Can I bully you out of it? Can I seduce you out of it? Can I confuse you out of it? Can I make holding on to the truth so painful that you'll voluntarily return to the lie? Every time you stand your ground, every time you calmly say, no, that's not what happened, you pass the test, you reinforce the new reality. You demonstrate that your commitment to truth is stronger than your desire for their approval or your fear of their disapproval. You show them, and more importantly, you show yourself that you cannot be manipulated back into blindness. But every time you back down, you teach them that the manipulation still works. You're just giving them a roadmap for how to defeat you next time. You're showing them exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit, which desires to manipulate. And that's a bad strategy. It's a bloody awful strategy, because here's what you need to understand. They're not going to stop. They can't stop. Your ability to see the truth represents an existential threat to their entire psychological structure. They will escalate until either you break or they do. There is no middle ground where you can see the truth and they can maintain their lie in peace. The two realities cannot coexist. So you have a choice to make. You can surrender your heart, one clarity for the temporary relief of ending the conflict. You can trade your soul for peace. Or you can steel yourself for what's coming next. Because if the manipulation fails, if they realize that they cannot pull you back into the shared fantasy and that their mask has been permanently removed, you will witness something truly terrifying. Right? When the manipulation fails, when they realize that they cannot pull you back into the shared fantasy and that their mask has been permanently removed, you will witness something terrifying: narcissistic rage. This is not normal anger. Normal anger is a response to a transgression. Normal anger has a target, a cause, and a purpose. Normal anger seeks correction, justice, or resolution. This is something else entirely. This is the panicked, cornered, apocalyptic rage of a creature facing annihilation. It is the rage of a god who has just discovered their worshippers are now atheists. It's an extinction burst, the frantic, final, and most violent thrashing of a dying behavior. When a behavior that has worked for years suddenly stops working, the organism doesn't simply give up. No, it doubles down, then triples down, unleashing every variation of the behavior with increasing intensity. It's like an animal caught in a trap, gnawing at its own leg with savage desperation. The narcissist, faced with the collapse of their psychological architecture, will thrash with a fury that defies comprehension. You have to understand what you're witnessing. This is not a person having a bad day. This is not someone who's merely upset or frustrated. This is a psychological structure in complete collapse, a house of cards built on lies and manipulation falling in on itself. The rage you're seeing is the sound of their entire world ending. Think about the great tyrants of mythology and history. What happens when their absolute authority is questioned? They don't engage in debate. They don't consider the merits of the challenge. They unleash overwhelming, disproportionate force. They seek to obliterate the source of the challenge, not because they believe they're right, but because the very existence of the challenge threatens the foundation of their power. Look at the mythological tyrant kings. When their divine right to rule is questioned, they don't respond with reason or diplomacy. They respond with plague, with fire, with the sword. They would rather rule over ashes than not rule at all. The narcissist in a rage is enacting this archetype. They are the tyrant whose subjects have dared to look behind the curtain. The goal is not to correct you. The goal is not to convince you. The goal is not even to win the argument. The goal is to punish you, to annihilate you emotionally, psychologically, sometimes even professionally, for the crime of seeing them. They want to make you an example. They want to demonstrate to themselves and to any other potential witnesses what happens to those who dare to see the truth. This is retribution in its purest form. You have committed the ultimate heresy in their religion of self-worship. You have denied their divinity. And for that, you must be destroyed, not reformed, not corrected, not convinced. Destroyed. They want to erase you from existence, to make you disappear so completely that even the memory of your challenge fades into nothing. Crucially, in their mind, you are the aggressor. You, by seeing the truth, have attacked them. You have done them a grave injury. You have reached into their chest and torn out their heart. Therefore, their rage is, in their twisted logic, a justified defensive response. They are not the tyrant unleashing fury upon an innocent subject. They are the innocent victim defending themselves against an unprovoked assault. This inversion of reality is not accidental. It's not a mistake or a misunderstanding. It's a fundamental feature of their psychological architecture. They literally cannot perceive themselves as the aggressor because to do so would require acknowledging that their position was illegitimate from the beginning. And that acknowledgement would destroy them more completely than your challenge ever could. This is why you cannot reason with them in this state. You are not dealing with a rational actor engaged in a disagreement. You are dealing with a raw, exposed nerve, an ego fighting for its very existence. Every word you speak, every attempt at explanation or justification is perceived as another attack. Your very presence is an assault on their reality. They are not listening to your words. They cannot hear your words. All they can perceive is the existential threat that you represent. You are not a person with thoughts and feelings and a valid perspective. You are a cancer that must be cut out, a virus that must be destroyed, a demon that must be exorcised. And your only move is not to engage, but to hold your ground and protect yourself from the blast. Do not attempt to reason with the hurricane. Do not try to negotiate with the tornado. Do not think you can calm the storm with logic or appeals to their better nature. There is no better nature accessible in this state. There is only the raw, primal fury of a cornered animal. Document everything. Record what you can. Protect yourself legally, emotionally, and physically. Because they are not themselves in this moment. They are something far more dangerous. They are a god in the process of dying, and dying gods are capable of unimaginable destruction. The rage will eventually burn itself out. It must. No organism can maintain that level of fury indefinitely. But do not mistake the end of the rage for the end of the war. When the fire dies down, when the screaming stops, when the immediate fury passes, they will not emerge humbled or repentant. They will emerge with a new strategy, a different weapon, a more insidious approach to the same fundamental goal, the restoration of their shattered illusion and the elimination of the threat you represent. What happens when the rage burns out and you're still standing, when the storm has passed and the truth remains? They pivot to their most insidious and often most effective weapon, the mantle of the victim. Suddenly, the tyrant becomes a martyr. The aggressor becomes the wounded party. The script flips entirely. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. You're cruel. You're ungrateful. I'm the one who has been wronged here. The transformation is so complete, so seamless, that you might begin to doubt your own memory of what just transpired. This is perhaps their most sophisticated psychological weapon because it requires no admission of guilt, no acknowledgement of their previous behavior, no explanation for the sudden change in narrative. They simply step into a new role, as if the previous one never existed. The rage, the manipulation, the threats, all of it disappears into a memory hole, replaced by this new reality where they are the suffering victim of your inexplicable cruelty. This tactic is so damn effective because it's aimed directly at the heart of good, decent, agreeable people. It's designed to trigger your empathy, your compassion, your guilt. These are not weaknesses. These are among your greatest strengths as a human being. But in the hands of a skilled manipulator, your virtues become weapons turned against you. You are a reasonable person. You think, well, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I did hurt them. You start to second guess yourself. This is psychological warfare of the highest order. They're trying to make you feel so guilty for seeing the truth that you will voluntarily blind yourself again. They're weaponizing your own moral sensitivity against your capacity for discernment. The genius of this approach is that it transforms your act of courage, seeing and speaking the truth, into an act of aggression. You didn't stand up to a bully. You bullied an innocent victim. You didn't expose a lie. You cruelly attacked someone who was vulnerable. The narrative has been completely inverted, and you've been cast